Imagine this. You are sitting in front of a big pile of unfinished projects. It's like a junkyard of half-written books, abandoned business ideas, and hobbies you dabbled in for a week before excitedly moving on to the next shiny thing. Now, imagine that each one of those projects is tied to your brain with a string. No wonder you are exhausted. In many ways, starting something that you'll never finish is a form of self-sabotage, and holding on to all that unfinished crap is screwing you over. It's stealing your energy and suffocating your creativity, and you probably don't even realize it. Welcome to the Growth Mindset Psychology podcast, where we dive into the messy, complicated world of human motivation and figure out how to actually get things done without losing our minds. You aren't here for fluffy, feel-good advice, and you also aren't here for toxic productivity tips to help you start getting up at 3 a.m. and ordering a side salad for your salad. No, this episode is for people who want to get themselves together, do meaningful work without burning out. I am Webster Harris, and like a lot of you, I am not a productivity robot. I've got ADHD and have started all the projects. I get bored really fast, and as such, I really don't care about the same old tips that you've heard a million times. Waking up early, do the hard stuff first, inbox zero, blah, blah, blah. I don't need that. I want strategies that actually work for messy, chaotic humans like me, because in reality, I think that is most of us. From witnessing my own sprawling mess of projects and what made some of them so successful, I have honed in on ways to make sure that I finish the things that matter and get rid of a lot of the mental clutter. And I want to help you work out how you can cut through the noise and focus on finishing the things that actually matter to you. And a question I'll pose is, what if the real problem isn't starting too many things, but holding on to the wrong ones? Today in the episode, I'm going to blow up some myths about productivity, explore why not finishing everything might be the smartest thing you can do, and I'll be sharing unconventional mindsets and strategies that I use to filter through ideas to actually get them done. Trust me, by the end of the episode, you'll be rethinking your whole approach. So stay tuned, it's going to be a fun episode. It probably doesn't surprise or amaze you to hear that starting things you don't finish is wasting your time. It steals your creative output and energy from working on the things you do finish. The fantastic idea you had years ago that you're still holding on to blocks your ability to seize the moment today. And my first essential piece of advice on helping you finish things is that you don't have to finish everything. Especially don't tie yourself up with baggage of old ideas. I think the productivity guru concept that we can work harder or engineer our routine or mindset to finish absolutely anything is dumb and not true. You can start many books, but you shouldn't finish them all. When a book becomes an unrewarding challenge that makes you not bother to read on most days, that ruins your reading habit, and it's better to abandon it and start new books that do excite you to read more. And often by avoiding all the stress and pain of trying to finish things that aren't right for us, we can move much faster. And it's the same with any ideas and projects. You know full well you can unsubscribe from all those newsletters that you don't read. You can also unsubscribe from the blog you aren't writing, the friends that don't text back, or the yoga class you barely attend. Just like ditching the book you aren't reading frees up room for new books, it's the same for that Wednesday evening language class that you don't really attend that could be used otherwise. Trying to be a completer freezes you when you want to keep moving. The important thing is to actually keep moving. The concept we have to stick with our commitments is backwards. It's okay to start lots of things, but you need to quickly learn what works, abandon what doesn't, and hone in on what's the actual solution, which is starting more of the things you do finish. Now, that sounds quite similar, I know, and it also sounds almost too easy. Start more things that I do finish. But often I find when you turn a problem slightly on its head, it does give you the genius solution. I start so many things that I struggle to finish. So if I just try to use some of those starts that I jump into to only to start the things that I do finish, more things get finished. And I'll explain why this is really smart from some behavioral psychology. there's a thing called the action model, where what makes us complete an action is our motivation to do it and our ability. And so if you examine your history and identify the actions that you finish, that shows you the things where you have both the motivation and the ability to finish them. And doing more of those is leaning into your strengths and interests. So to help you filter through all the projects and hobbies you might start, list the things that when you do start them, you subsequently finish them. These are the things that you enjoy and motivate and you are good at them. And if you're looking through this list and you can identify some of the ones that do create value, spend more time starting those things. And not everything has to create value. Like maybe you try to read lots of hardcore philosophy or psychology books and don't finish them, but you always finish lighter reading. If you want to get better at reading, just do more of the reading that works for you. And slowly you will build a muscle to work up to harder things. It's the exact same thing with exercise. Maybe you walk your dog every day, but you fail to really go to the gym. Cancel your gym subscription and walk your dog twice a day. Like you've doubled the amount of exercise you've done. Okay, easy, right? So obvious, and yet we feel like we have to jump straight to this really hard thing that actually we're not going to do. This is a huge life hack. So many times the answer is sitting here right in front of us and we don't see it. Going through those list of pointers I just gave you might really help you find what is your calling. I would give yourself some time to dwell on it. I remember writing down that idea a few years ago and thinking, wow, just doing more of what I do finish sounds so dumb, so obvious. It's almost too easy. I'm not going to think about it too much. Stop starting new things I struggle with. Start more of the things I don't struggle with and finish. And it genuinely took me like a year to realize how smart it was. And I finally started taking my own advice. And yeah, lots of things in my life got better because of that. I do more of the things I finish that I do a good job of. And that's great. After 6 years of running this podcast as a little side passion project, I've realized I could take it seriously and do it full time as a creator. Dreamy lifestyle, run around having adventures, working wherever I want. And my listeners have grown like crazy because I just spend more time doing the thing I'm actually good at and like doing. Yeah, brainwave, I know. So if you ever think I'm trying to pretend I'm a genius, trust me, it can take me years to realize a good idea when it's sitting right in front of me. But I think we've heard enough about this concept now. As I said, take that point seriously, but I do have other insights for you today. As they say, variety is the spice of life, and I believe we should have lots of new and different ideas that we do want to finish because it's important for us to change and grow as individuals, which means exploring and taking on a variety of different things that we have never done before. I did promise you at the start of the episode a bunch of alternative tools to help you finish things, and that is what you are going to get. So, number 2, let's start identifying the blockers that you have, thinking about how to make them easier. We often tie ourselves to a really hard way of doing something that we need to. A brilliant habit to learn is the art of making things easier for ourselves, because this is very much tied to the concept of perfection. Things don't need to be perfect, they need to be done. And we know that striving to be perfect and not finishing means we aren't creating anything, we're just messing around. And when we have limited time in this life, we do need to do things rather than fantasize about them. I'll give you an example when it comes to my own writing processes. I really like to write very long, thought out pieces that go on several tangents, and I unpack them into some grand meta theory on life, the universe, and pretty much everything. That leads to me wanting to cover every single edge case because I worry there will be some odd scenario where my logic is flawed or someone can point a hole in it. The problem with when I write a post like that is that they are quite hard to finish writing, and they're just as hard for a reader to finish reading because they're like 10,000 words long. Before I publish anything, I obviously try and edit it a few times, but because it's so long, by the time I've finished editing it, I've already forgotten what the start is and I have to re-edit it again. And I hate doing that and put it off. A lot of my really, really long ideas that give the perfect answer to everything in life never get published. What I have to do is create some clarity on the goal. Give myself a target on what it is I want the reader to think once they've finished reading it, then set myself a word limit and a time limit to create that effect. By doing that, it forces me to make some difficult decisions and establish real priorities in what I'm writing about, but the work becomes 10 times easier to finish. Because I know I don't have to answer absolutely everything, I can get much more creative and invent better analogies that cover more of my bases up front. Thus, more things can get done and published. Equally, another blocker that used to come up from my writing was trying to format everything perfectly, optimize the title and the keywords for SEO, maintaining a jazzy website, and all of those things just added tasks that held me back when really what I wanted to do was write consistently. I gave it all up, went onto Substack, and I just write the things I want to write without really caring about the perfect title or any of the formatting because it's all done for me. And I don't have to maintain any website, it just goes onto Substack and it's there and I'm done. It's easier, it's not perfect, but it's quite good. And for 20% of the effort, gives me 80% of the results. So yes, we've all heard of the 80-20 rule, but the lesson here is to identify the goal of what you're doing and try to remove as many of the non-essential blockers that are getting in your way to turn the task that you wrestle with into things that you finish with more ease and more enjoyment. Returning to the action behavior model, where actions that get completed are down to our motivation and our ability. One big factor of our ability is just how much time we have for it and just how many little mental efforts we have to do from re-going over things. If there are a bunch of just annoying little, slightly difficult tasks in between the main work and then shipping it, to try to remove all those little things that don't actually matter. Okay, so we've learned we can look at the things that get in our way and stop us and make them easier. But what about those big, hairy problems we just can't ever make ourselves do? These are the dangerous blockers that we can't or won't beat. Ultimately, in life, there are lots of tasks that have many elements in them that we really, really enjoy. But they also have an element of them that we really, really don't enjoy and can't complete. And when that happens, we could be in for some real trouble. Let's say you run a creative business, but you just can't do accounts, for example. To run a business, you have to do your accounts. That is a recipe for trouble. And if we can't find a way to make things easier for us or enjoyable, we have a few options. We can either try and force it into our brain that it is so important and so essential part of a process that we do start doing it, and we have to tie it to how much we really want to do the other thing. But if we still can't do just the difficult, crucial aspect of the project, then that's a sign that it isn't right for us. Now, it's easy to come up with excuses, but they really don't help here. I have ADHD, for example. I could easily lean on the excuse that doing accounts is boring and not in my nature. But if I do want to run a business, I have to do accounts, so they do get done. And I put them off. I sometimes make mistakes. But when it comes to the time limit warning, I do stick on my headphones and just sit and do my accounts for a few days, and it's done. But other things that I don't like doing, like running social media and marketing for my podcast, it isn't 100% essential and it's boring, and I haven't done them at all for the entire time of the podcast. Now that the podcast is starting to grow and I'm getting better at many different elements and optimizing different things, I'm starting to look at the concept of marketing and be like, there's some fun things I can do with the way I write my descriptions and my copy, and it's changing to something I can now work on. But for 7 years, I ran the podcast without that blocking me from doing the thing that I enjoyed, because there's no point giving you a bunch of work that you don't enjoy and you aren't going to do. So when you are struggling with a hard thing, reassess if you can drop it, or look into how you can reframe it as something that is essential for your passion and you can enjoy it as a small sacrifice. And if you have really tied the concept that this hard thing is part of your passion and you still don't do it, then that might mean you aren't as passionate as you thought you were. Of course, with many things, there are ways to delegate and get help if you have a budget. And if you haven't got a budget, you might be able to trade your personal skills and time to help someone else do something that you are good at in return for them doing something for you. Remember, it doesn't have to be you doing every single thing. We know that life is short. Certainly wasting your time trying to build every single skill ever, you can certainly delegate. But whilst we're here on this point, we'd like to point out the danger where some processes do need to be done fully, otherwise they end up being worse than not doing anything at all. For example, you could look at the ketogenic diet, where when you follow it, your body burns fat and ketones instead of carbs. And thus in a diet, you eat mostly fat, you get almost all of your calories from fat and also some protein, and you don't eat any carbs at all. Now, some people get excited by the concept that fat can be healthy for you and you can lose weight. Great. And they'll immediately start eating lots more fatty things, but they don't quite get around to avoiding all the carbs. And that means they up their calories a lot and they are never actually in ketosis. They just get fatter and unhealthier. And yeah, that is not the keto diet. You have missed an essential element of it, thus you've made everything worse. So sometimes it can damage you to pick parts of the process you like doing whilst avoiding the hard part that you're never going to do. And a diet like the keto diet is very extreme, and most people aren't really going to follow it for a whole year, and they would definitely enjoy finding other ways to become a healthier person. And there are various projects out there and ideas that will be like that, where we're almost doing something, we're doing bits of the things that we like, but not the essential hard part. It's just damaging and wasting our time. Loads of people start a business for an app idea that are like, this is going to change the world, this is great, and they don't want to talk to anyone and find out what people really want. And so they'll spend lots of money on getting someone to build an app. It takes a year of their time, ton of their money. They release the app. No one wants it because they didn't spend any time talking to customers and building little features that people like. So that's actually really hard. And it's easier to spend lots of money and fool yourself into thinking you're doing the right thing. And they waste a year or two of their life and lots of their money. So you have to be really, really conscious of if you're starting a project and you're going to skip the most important essential element and not do it properly, you are actually making your worse. At some level, you do have to accept who you are and the things you can or can't do currently, and not start the whole project unless you're willing to do the essential hard part or get someone else to do it for you. As they say with growth mindset, you can do anything, but you can't do everything. Ultimately, trying to take on really, really hard things that you don't enjoy sap your time and energy. And you might drop the things you're good at doing to try and do the things that you aren't good at, when it makes more sense to lean into your strengths. So you should remember you don't have to fight every single obstacle in your way. Some of these blockers will waste your time. Some of them will hold you back and actually make things worse for you. A lot of these you can give to someone else. So the most important thing is to identify these critical blockers and then either do them, delegate them, drop them completely, or avoid the entire project if it's actually going to make your life worse. The conclusion we got to there is something I have heard before, that do it, delegate it, drop it. But I do have some fresh ideas in the oven coming up for you. I think we all have these moments in life where we have this big idea for a business or a song so good it would be sacrilege not to do it really well. But what happens is we sit on them for a year or maybe 5 years, and we actually just build up creative constipation. But what do you do about it? Well, you can find out after the break to talk about our sponsors that keep the show running. But if you are interested in saving time, you can join the premium subscription to remove all the ads, as well as unlock some bonus extra content. I'll catch you on the other side. As we've already learned, starting things we ultimately don't finish does steal our creative output, productive time, which is damaging, and time is the only thing we can't get back. The next tip I'm going to say I have also slightly heard before, which is valuing your time. It's something you see so many young people not really understanding their value of at all until much too late. But once we truly value our time, we can be really focused on how we use it. And I certainly don't advocate for being overly analytical about every little 5 minutes and having a time block allowance on how long you can spend talking to your mother each week, etc. That's not too helpful. But having a hypothetical valuation of your time can be really helpful. Naval Ravikant, for example, he put this hypothetical valuation on his time as $1,000 an hour, just to make himself take himself seriously. And it can really prevent you from doing low value work for other people. We feel this obligation that we should do things for people when they offer us stuff to do, or especially if it's going to be paid. But that's a great way to waste our time not doing things we really want to do in life. When you value your time highly, it helps you plan the day effectively, and it helps you say no to the little projects that can fill your time that aren't going to be that useful for you, and focus on the most important things and the things that you're going to finish. I really don't like the concept of squeezing every single second of your life for absolute total value and making as much money, because it's not really all about money. Maybe some of the things you value are just doing nothing with your weekend, or spending some time doing art or walking and playing games. So purely a financial metric isn't always ideal, but a lot of people, if they did use a financial metric on their time for when they are working, could find that they only need to work 3 days a week with focus, and they could spend 4 days a week doing nothing because they have the skills to cut out all that overthinking and expansion of work to fill time that will chase you if you aren't being slightly ruthless with how you take on projects, what you choose to do, and where you waste your time, because whilst you're wasting time, you are wasting your potential. And this leads to my next point of where I think it's really, really important to refuse to work on things you don't want to do. The paid work and tasks that we get asked to do, we then become known for. because that's what we've spent time doing. Thus, it becomes a regular part of our routine and even defines our life. The issue is doing things that don't align with us drains us and makes it harder to motivate ourselves to start doing other things. And this can be very hard when you're starting something early if you are trying to become a freelancer or start a business. Maybe you want to become a writer for thriller and mystery podcasts, and you're a good copywriter and someone pays you to write some copy for a marketing podcast. Because of that, you get another client for a business podcast. Next thing you know, you work on 3 more marketing podcast projects, and you're not doing any of the mystery writing that was the point, which is why you got into writing for podcasts. The work stresses you out and drains you and leaves you creatively spent and unmotivated to work on the thing you wanted to do. It's not easy, but you actually do have to say no to a lot of opportunities if you really want to achieve a specific goal. As I've said, action is motivation plus ability, but if you tire yourself out from doing work that you don't enjoy, you won't have the motivation or ability to do other stuff. A lot of the reasons in life we struggle to get round to doing the things we are passionate about is because we're too busy and too blocked by the other things. You have to have a framework that helps you say no to stuff. You do need to spend some time looking at your big goals in life, what you really want to achieve, and ask yourself how much time you spend on things that push you in the right direction. And it's part of the reason that you're not achieving these goals and starting projects you want to do and not finishing them because you're too busy with projects you don't actually want to be doing. So many of us spend time doing things just because that's what we already do and they don't know how to stop doing it. They aren't asking themselves the hard question of if this thing is really worthwhile or if they're doing it just because they feel like they should be doing it. And what I really love here is this point nicely conflicts with my very first piece of advice of doing the things you do finish. And life is complicated and full of paradoxes. Sadly, if you are known for working on and finishing things that you don't want to be doing, you do have to work less on the things you finish and spend time jumping into those things that you've never had time to finish. Yes, that is annoying and scary and some things might go wrong. And plenty of things will probably go wrong in the process. But it is okay to take some small steps here. You might not want to get completely rid of all the things you don't want to be doing and try to cut back a little bit. Perhaps don't quit your job straight away. Maybe try to free up some of your side projects so you're only working on one thing you like and try to reduce the main big things you work on from 5 days a week to a part-time job if you can, to really give that part-time thing a chance. And for example, before I started this podcast, I ran several different side businesses. I had an adventure company, I ran a dev agency, I had 3 other podcasts. And yeah, obviously, that wasn't going to be a great life strategy. And I was like, whoa, I want to have one side project that is the only thing I do. So I ended up being just an entrepreneur that had just one side project that was this podcast. Of course, I had plenty of sports-based hobbies and activities with other people, but this was my only slightly hustle hobby that I had. And that really gave myself the space to be creative that I wasn't getting whilst I was running my business. Okay, and now onto my final, possibly my favorite idea when it comes to the whole concept of getting things done. And that is to realize that our really crazy, amazing, big ideas are just stepping stones. I find I'll have some overwhelmingly brilliant idea, at least I think it's a brilliant idea. And I feel I have to do it perfectly. And it's going to be the thing that blows up. It's going to be like a comedy sketch so funny, I go viral and the rest of my life is perfect, or a business so good, I'm obviously going to become a billionaire and never work again in my life. And the issue is, again, we get another angle that tries to make us do things perfectly. And whenever we get this idea that we should be doing something perfectly, it's probably wrong. As I've said earlier, perfection is a huge blocker to getting things done. And you'll really find that people who are new to something will have these big ideas that they hold on to and think they have to do perfectly, such as a young founder who think their idea is so good, they're scared to even share it with others. They think they have to lock themselves away for 2 years and build this perfect app that's going to change the world, but it goes nowhere. Or someone who starts on YouTube has this idea for a YouTube video that they think is going to be absolutely amazing, but they don't have the skills with the camera. They don't have the skills to tell the story. They don't have the skills with the animation. And they're like, this is the best video idea ever, but I can't do it. And so they just don't make any videos at all. And I honestly have ideas like this all over the place, like a comedy sketch or a product feature, a new song, a social media post where I'm like, this idea is so good. I have to do it perfectly. But that is the wrong mentality. If I was to ever create that idea in the perfect state, it requires so much learning, so many new skills, which just takes so much time. It's so easy to just put these ideas in a pile of, I'll get round to them later when I'm some wizard at coding, hilarious comedian who's won BAFTAs in sound production and can do everything exactly how they should be. And so you just leave them in this pile where they never happen. Sometimes I'll make a start on them, but I get stuck feeling I can't quite do them justice compared to the brilliant idea of it in my mind. And I develop this stupid internal sense that this is the best song ever or the best comedy sketch that I will ever have in my life. And this idea is so precious that this is your ticket to success. But I am going to tell you right now, it is the opposite. When you believe that an idea is so good that it has to be done perfectly, you stop working on things, you lose your creativity muscle, it just becomes a blocker, and it's a huge piece of creative baggage in your life that holds you back. Think of it as creative constipation. And the realization is that creativity is regenerative. The more you use creativity, the more time you spend being creative, the more it builds. You have to climb over that hurdle, jump over that hurdle, bang your head through that hurdle, whatever it is, just do the thing. Learn a few skills to make it happen, but don't get lost trying to learn skills. Just try and do things. And when you do things, that leads to having better ideas. What's interesting is that an idea that feels really good right now might only be 20% of the potential of the sorts of ideas you'll have in 5 years' time if you just keep on having ideas in that area. It's likely that if you write 100 songs, you'll be better at writing songs. But if you stop and wait, you're going nowhere. And you have to become comfortable putting things out there in an imperfect state so you can learn and improve. The key here is developing momentum with which we can develop further skills and get better ideas. When a founder has an idea for a big business and after 1 month just ships some kind of crappy, stuck together product, they at least have something out there in the market that will give them some insights. They can test it with people. They can learn things they wouldn't have thought of, and that becomes a stepping stone to the next improvement or even a completely different business entirely that could be better. Like a perfect example of this is if you look at Mr. Beast, he started just making lots of videos that were crap. He slowly honed in on his formula that was good. And some of the ideas he had in his first year, he thought were really bloody good. And he did his absolute best at the time to make them what they were, but he never sat down for a whole year just to make one video, when he knew he could be making 2 videos a week. And by constantly shipping things that weren't perfect but were still quite good, he got better and better at making videos. And it was only the process of working on so many videos and growing his channel that gave him the capacity to have the idea for his Squid Games video, which was just such a massive and huge idea that totally blew up, became his biggest video ever. But if he'd got stuck with one of his first ideas a few years in, if he'd allowed that creative constipation to build up, he'd never have gotten to the size to even have the ideas to build a video as massive as the Squid Games video. And a lot of us will have this idea for a book or whatever that we think has to be perfect, and we'll hold on to it for 20 years and do nothing, when we could have just been shipping something regularly, and within 5-10 years of doing that thing regularly, we'd be having wildly better and bigger ideas. It's so much more important to unblock yourself, to keep that flow of creativity going. So remember, if you do have really big brainwaves, do not protect them. If you feel like an idea is really good, the most important thing you can do is fricking get it out there as quickly as possible. Good ideas are just stepping stones on the path to more good ideas. If you don't cast that stone, you can't use it. You can't move on to the next stop. Unblock yourself. That idea is just part of your path onwards. Remember that value is doing the thing, not holding on to the thing. Value is made by the people who create stuff and not by the consumers. So as we've learned, it is important to finish things. Think in life that you can regularly and reliably create is making value as long as you finish and ship it. Writing 30,000 words of a book that you don't publish could take half a year of your life, but at the end of it, you've published 0 books. It's better to write 30 blog posts, each of 1,000 words, where you publish all of them, because that's 30 ideas that have gone into the world. Don't fight an uphill battle pushing on doors that won't ever open for you. Double down on your strengths. Think of alternative ways to deal with your weaknesses and make things easier for yourself in life. And as I said at the beginning, don't finish what you start more of what you finish. Now, some questions I'd like you to ponder to help you, to really help put this into action would be, firstly, what tasks do I reliably finish? And which of those could create value if you did more of them? Then look at what are your unfinished projects. What are the specific tasks within those projects that you are avoiding that perhaps blocks you from finishing? How can you make it more likely to complete those difficult tasks by making it smaller, delegating it, changing the time of day, doing it with other people? Or can you just remove the difficult part of those tasks entirely? Then try and look at any of the projects that you start that you know you probably won't finish, but could actually be very damaging because it takes some money, takes a lot of time, just becomes a big commitment in your life that isn't going anywhere. Try and think about what is your goal when you start those projects and if there's a different way to achieve that. Next, start looking at your interest in life, like how much time do you put into things that you don't have interest in due to just the people around you being interested in it or the fact that you get paid to do it and it's just become your thing. Reassess what your goals are in life and what things you should be saying no to give yourself more energy and time for the direction you want to be moving in. And think about how you could revalue your time to make sure you prioritize what you work on. And finally, I want you to think of all of these really good ideas that you've had that you've never done. Think of them as just this big brick wall in the way of your life getting to the next stage, and realize that this wall can be turned into stepping stones that build the path towards where you want to go. If you let go of perfect, do an easier, enjoyable version, just ship it, move on, relieve that creative constipation and let the ideas flow forth. The truth is, you can always revisit that idea 5 years later and do a better version when you have more skills if you want, but you just have to get these things out there and done. Don't hold on to your brilliant ideas, ship them. Okay, those questions are in the show notes. If you enjoyed the episode and you have a friend who definitely has creative constipation, please share this with them to provide them some light relief. And remember that if you want to enjoy your life, it does start with enjoying today. Might not be easy, but it is important. Thank you so much for listening.
Go you!
Your consistency to reach the end of an episode is legendary.
My hero!
But when we learn things, it's important to reflect. So I politely invite you to take a pause, rifle through the biggest ideas you just heard. So here's your opportunity to hit pause and have a think. Okay, did you wrestle with some insights? Information doesn't stick when we race from one podcast to the next without using our brain to play with the knowledge. So here's another go at a pause. Alrighty, I'll let you off to continue with your life now. If you have any ideas or feedback for the show, I'm always interested to hear from you.
You're the best!
And other than that, please stay curious. Curious. Growth. Smiling for no reason.